Um, I'm going to continue on from last week's topic, which is the four seals of Dharma. And this is taken partly from the book What Makes You Not a Buddhist by Dongzar Kyatse Rinpoche, who is a filmmaker, author, and a lama, a Tibetan lama. And just to kind of to recap the what the four seals were or are, is that the first one is all emotions. Oh, excuse me. The first one is all compounded things are impermanence, talking about the impermanence of all things. The second one is all emotions are painful. Something that kind of out of the Four Noble Truths is that as far as this life is built on kind of the foundation of suffering. The third one is all phenomena are empty, which just talks about emptiness. And then the fourth seal is nirvana is beyond extremes. So I'm going to continue with the last two. And mostly on the third one. The third one's really, of course, when we start talking about emptiness, emptiness can be a very complicated concept for our minds at trying to understand what it is, and it's really trying to understand something that you can't grasp, and that's the whole idea of emptiness. So the third seal is all phenomena are empty. They are without inherent existence. When we say all, that means everything, including the Buddha, enlightenment, and the path. Buddhists defined a phenomena as something with characteristics, the things that make it up. Just like we're a combination of elements that makes us up. And as an object that is conceived by a subject, to hold that object is something external is ignorance. And it is this that prevents us to seeing the truth of that object. In that we create our world with our mind. So it's understanding that what we're calling something isn't necessarily true. It's just it's something made up, so we can understand it. And that and it's useful. It's not the idea that a letting go of a stop sign isn't a stop sign. The stop sign serves a purpose, and it protects us and other people. So it's not the idea, it's not nihilism. It's not, all is nothing and what's the point? There is a point to it. The truth of phenomena is called sunyata, emptiness. Ku in Japanese. You'll hear it in our chants, ku, or mu, depending on how it's used. Which implies that the phenomena does not possess a truly existent essence or nature. When a deluded person or a subject sees something, the object seen is interpreted as something really existent. However, as you can see, the existence inputted by the subject is a mistaken assumption. Such an assumption is based on the different conditions that make an object appear to be true. This, however, is not how the object really is. It's like when we see a mirage, there's no truly existing object there, even though it appears that way. With emptiness, the Buddha meant that things do not truly exist as we mistakenly believe they do, and that they are really empty of that falsely imputed existence. It is because they believe in what are really just confused projections that sentient beings suffer. It was as a remedy that for this that the Buddha taught the Dharma. Put very simply, when we talk about emptiness, we mean that the way things appear are not the way they actually are. As I've said before, when speaking about emotions, you may see a mirage and think it is something real, but when you get close, the mirage disappears, however real it may seem to begin with. We create attachments, and we create pushing things away that we don't like. It's picking and choosing, and we might root for one team and hope the other team loses. That's picking and choosing. So we do that all through our lives, and in that, when our team doesn't win, there's a suffering. It's not bad suffering unless you're really attached to your team, but it is a form of suffering. So sometimes the suffering is not so bad. Suffering actually has a purpose, and it teaches us. If we pay attention, it can teach us a lot. I have there was a saying I picked up long ago, and it was, when you change the way you look at things, what you look at changes. And that's really what he's talking about, because the phenomena of what we perceive, if we let go of our attachment, or if there's a amount of acceptance, then what we see and tends to change, and our suffering lessens. It might not go all the way away, but there's a lessening of that. So it's really looking at things differently, and there's an acceptance to way the lives are, but not necessarily just, like I said, it's not a nihilistic idea. It's a way of, okay, that's the way that is. How can I work with that? In emptiness, the Buddha meant that things do not truly exist as we mistakenly believe they do, and that they are really empty of that falsely imputed existence. Emptiness can sometimes be referred to as the Dharmakaya, which is one of the three baskets it's referred to. It's the metaphorical body, or a collection of all the Buddha's good qualities. The wisdom, the compassion, his fortitude, and his patience. So that's what what is referred to as the Dharmakaya. And in a different context, we could say that the Dharmakaya is permanent, never changing, all pervasive, and used all sorts of beautiful poetic words. These are the mystical expressions that belong to the path, but for the moment, we are still on the ground stage, trying to get an intellectual understanding. On the path, we might portray the Buddha as a symbol of the Dharmakaya, or emptiness. But from an academic point of view, even to think of painting their Dharmakaya is a mistake. And you'll see this in, I believe they call them Thankas, which are Tibetan paintings of different Buddhas, demons, bodhisattvas. So they're creating this thing. But what he's saying that even creating that might be a mistake, because then we get attached to this idea of what that is, and that, oh, that's this. This Buddha is that Buddha. And we start picking and choosing again. The Buddha taught 3 different approaches on 3 different occasions. These are known as the 3 turnings of the world. 3 turnings of the wheel. But they can be summed up in a single phrase. Mind, there is no mind. Mind is luminosity. First, mind refers to the first set of teachings and shows that the Buddha taught that there is a mind. This was to dispel the nihilistic view that there is no heaven, no hell, no cause effect. Then, when the Buddha said there is no mind, he meant that the mind is just a concept, and there is no such thing as a truly existing mind. Finally, when he said mind is luminous, he was referring to Buddha nature, the undiluted, primordially existing wisdom. And you'll see this argued in science of what the mind is. It's not, and they're starting to examine what the mind is. It's beyond what's this matter that's in our head, the brain, and that the mind is a collection of the body. The great commentator Nagarjuna said that the purpose of the first turning was to get rid of non-virtue. Where does the non-virtue come from? It comes from being either externalist or nihilist. So in order to put the end to non-virtuous deeds and thoughts, the Buddha gave his first teaching. And the first teaching, or the first turning of the wheel, is considered what he did with the Four Noble Truths. The second turning of the Dharma wheel, when the Buddha spoke about emptiness, was presented in order to dispel clinging to the truly existent self and to truly existent phenomena. Finally, the teachings of the third turning were given to dispel all views, even the view of non-self. The Buddha's 3 sets of teachings do not seek to introduce something new. Their purpose is simply to clear away the confusion. What's he saying? This truth was already there. It just needed to be, it's just covered up with all our ideas and concepts and all these superstitions. As Buddhists, we practice compassion, but if we lack the understanding of this third steel, that all phenomena are empty, our compassion can backfire. And Bruce has spoke about this too, is that we can become attached to the compassion, or try to fix people, become codependent, confuse compassion with pity. There's a whole slew of things that can be compassion can be a trap if we're not really seeing things, as he said, as Bruce says, seeing things as they are, and not how we construct things. If you are attached to the goal of compassion when trying to solve a problem, you might notice that your idea of the solution is entirely based on your own personal interpretation. And you might end up as a victim of hope and fear, and consequently of disappointment. You start by becoming a good Mahayana practitioner, and once or twice you try to help sentient beings. But if you have no understanding of this third seal, you'll get tired and give up helping sentient beings. And it can be, from that point of view, the work of or what we perceive the work of the Bodhisattva. If you don't go in with clear eyes, it can wear you out, because it's you're still on the wheel of suffering. A correct understanding of emptiness leads us to see how things are related and how we are responsible for our world. There's another kind of problem that arises from not understanding emptiness, and it occurs with rather superficial or even jaded Buddhists. However, within Buddhist circles, if you don't accept emptiness, you are not cool. I thought that was kind of funny. So we pretend that we appreciate emptiness and pretend to meditate on it. But if we don't understand it properly, a bad side effect can occur. We might say, oh, everything's emptiness, and we can do whatever we like. And you see this in really destructive ways within communities, especially when a teacher takes this attitude, and whether they call it crazy wisdom or it becomes cultish, and it can really damage. We've seen this over and over again with communities where the idea of power and sex can really destroy a community because of one or two people's attitudes within this idea of crazy wisdom, or whatever they might be calling it. So we ignore and violate the details of karma, the responsibility of our actions. We become inelegant, and we discourage others from in the bargain. His Holiness the Dalai Lama often speaks about this downfall of not understanding emptiness. A correct understanding of emptiness leads us to see how things are related and how we are responsible for our world. Because in many ways, if you're in taking the wrong attitude, we lose our responsibilities in that we're responsible for things. We're part of the karma of our own, and we affect the cause and effect of others. So our actions do make a difference. A correct understanding of emptiness leads us to see how things are related and how we are responsible for our world. You can read millions of pages on this subject. Nagarjuna alone wrote 5 different commentaries, mostly dedicated to this. And then there are commentaries by his followers. There are endless teachings on establishing this view. In Mahayana temples or monasteries, people chant the Prajna Paramita Heart Sutra. This is also a teaching on the third seal. And to me, it's a part of the foundation of Zen is the idea of letting go of those, ideas of, even the idea of the Four Noble Truths, which you hear in the Heart Sutra, when it says, no suffering, no origination, no stopping, no path, no cognition, also no attainment. And so, they're talking about the Four Noble Truths there, in that it's not something to cling to. It's not something to say, it's not a badge to wear. Or because that in itself can become a part of our suffering. Philosophies or religions might say things are illusion. The world is Maya, illusion. But there are always one or two things left behind that are regarded as truly existence. God, cosmic energy, whatever. In Buddhism, this is not the case. Everything in samsara and nirvana, from the Buddha's head to a piece of bread, everything is emptiness. There is nothing that is not included in the ultimate truth. Here's a question. If we ourselves are dualistic, how can we ever understand emptiness, which is something beyond description? And it's a really good question. Buddhists are very slippery, you're right. You can never talk about absolute emptiness, but you can talk about an image of emptiness. And I think what he's talking about here is the relative view, because we always we begin with the relative view. It's expanding into the absolute, but it's also remembering that the relative view is part of the absolute. It's part of about the absolute emptiness. So you can talk about an image of emptiness, something that you can evaluate and contemplate, so that in the end you can get to the real emptiness. And that's what he's talking about. You start with a relative and you work towards an idea of absolute. You may say, oh, that's too easy, that's just such crap. But to that, the Buddhists say, too bad, that's how things work. And that's really true. It's kind of like arguing, karma. You can't argue it. It just is. And it's not good or bad. It just is. It's never the idea. I think there's a misconception about karma. It says, well, karma will bite him in the ass, or karma will get him, or his karma will catch up with him. And that might be true, or that might not be true. But because karma isn't a reward punishment system. It just is. Karma just is. If you need to meet someone who you've never met, I can describe him to you or show you a photograph of him. And with the help of that photo image, you can go and find the real person. And that's an interesting exercise that, and it's very true, because you can show somebody an image, a concept of someone. You could do an image search on Google and find out who that person really is. You could say, oh, that's the Dalai Lama. I want to meet the Dalai Lama. And then you could actually seek out and actually meet the Dalai Lama by just seeing a picture. And in your mind, you create this idea, and then you meet the real person. And then that might meet your expectations. It might let you down. But you actually complete the exercise. Ultimately speaking, the path is irrational, but relatively speaking, it's very rational, because it uses the relative conventions of our world. When I'm talking about emptiness, everything that I'm saving has to do with this image, emptiness. I can't really show you real emptiness, but I can tell you why things don't exist inherently. Another question. In Buddhism, there's so much iconography. What might you think was the object of meditation or an object of worship? But from your teaching, am I understanding that all this is non-existence? And so when you go to a temple and you see many beautiful statues and colors and symbols, and these are important for the path. These all belong to what we call image wisdom or image emptiness. However, while we follow the path and apply its methods, it's important to know that the path itself is ultimately an illusion. actually, it is only then that we can properly appreciate it. And there was a story I heard about the idea of the altar, and that when you look at an altar, the flowers go on the left and the candle goes on the right. The incense is in the middle, and there's a Buddha back there. And so someone's question was, well, why is the candle on the right? Why can't we put it on the left? And the teacher said, well, you can. You can do that. And it doesn't make a difference. But he said, it's because it doesn't make a difference that the candle goes on the right and the flowers go on the left and the Buddha goes in the middle. And for some reason, that made total sense, even though on the face value, it doesn't really make sense. But he's saying in the idea of emptiness, it's structured in this way. There is structure within emptiness. So I thought that was, and to be able to appreciate that idea. And so when you go into a temple, or at least a Zen temple, you can see there's a structure within that idea of emptiness. And that, and we recognize that. And that gives us our relative view of emptiness. The fourth seal, the final seal of the Dharma is nirvana is beyond extremes. And he says, now that I've explained emptiness, I feel that the fourth seal, nirvana is beyond extremes, has been also covered. And as in most Buddhist teachings, everything is covered by everything else. If you pay attention, you can see that even, I use the precepts as an idea of the precepts. There's the idea of the refuge and the precepts that go after. All those precepts are within themselves cover all the other ones. But briefly, this last seal is also something uniquely Buddhist. In many philosophies or religions, the final goal is something that you can hold on to and keep. The final goal is the only thing that truly exists. But nirvana is not fabricated, so it is not something to be held on to. It is referred to as beyond extremes. Somehow I think we can go somewhere where we have a better soft seat, a better shower system, a better sewer control. A nirvana where you don't even have to think about the remote control, where everything is there at the moment you think of it. But as I said earlier, it's not that we are adding something new that was not there before. Nirvana is achieved when you remove everything that is artificial and obscuring. And in that, what they're saying is that when you see the way things truly are, that's nirvana. That's the idea. There's an idea that everything is, you can make everything holy. And I like to use that word, in that something to be cherished. Everything can be cherished. Everything can be part of your spirituality. Everything can be Zen. In that when we change the way we look at things and no longer pick and choose, then we can achieve a state of nirvana within ourselves and develop a wisdom and compassion when we see all the terrible things that can be witnessed in this world. And it's not that we are laissez-faire and just let things be, and let terrible things continue and happen. No, we can be part of our practice can be trying to instigate some kind of change for the better. But it's also the idea that we're accepting the world as it is at that moment, at that very moment. So he goes, as long as you have these four seals in your view, nothing can go wrong. It doesn't matter whether you're a monk or a nun who has renounced worldly life, or you're a yogi practicing profound tantric methods. If you're trying to abandon or transform attachment in your own experiences, you don't understand these four seals. You end up regarding the contents of your mind as the manifestations of something evil, diabolical, and bad. If that's what you do, you are far from the truth. And the whole point of Buddhism is to make you understand the truth. If there is some true permanence in compounded phenomena, if there were true pleasure in emotions, the Buddha would have been the first to recommend them, and saying, please keep and treasure these. But thanks to his great compassion, he didn't, for he wanted us to have what is true, what is real. When you have a clear understanding of these four seals as the ground of your practice, you will feel comfortable no matter what happens to you. As long as you have these four as your view, nothing can go wrong. Whoever holds these four in their heart or in their head and contemplates them is a Buddhist. There is no need for such a person even to be called Buddhist. He or she is by definition a follower of the Buddha. And I thought that was pretty profound, because as he's talked about letting go of even the idea of labels and what we do as our practice. And I hope everybody got something out of this. And with that, I'll thank you and open it up for any questions or comments. Yes, Gary, go ahead.
I just want to thank you for your talk. It was really, really good subject material last week and this week, and I find it very, very helpful.
Thank you. They're so rich. There's so much teaching. When I sometimes I struggle, or I think I struggle, uh, putting together a talk when I'm asked to do a talk. And then for some reason it just comes, and it's just allowing. And so when this subject was broached, I thought it was very interesting. It wasn't something that I had paid attention to in the past. And for me, it's a teaching too. For me to be able to pass it on, it's part of my process too. So I'm hoping that people see some worth in it that I saw. Yes, go ahead,
Yeah,
Jerry.
one last thing. I find that I need the repetition. I mean, I probably heard these things out of me how many times, but I need to hear it again and again, and sort of rephrased, looking at it from different sides for me to feel like more of it's sunk in somehow, or more of it's understood.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Anything else?
Oh,
Gene,
could I?
go ahead, Gene.
Yeah, I guess I turned off the video. It's not working properly. You just have to imagine me. There was a recent NOVA program. Um, Sorry, let me get the name exactly. Uh, oh, NOVA, Your Brain, Who's in Control,
Mm.
last week. And I'm not really qualified to pass on the details, but it was exactly what you were talking about at the beginning, that they're scientists are starting to understand the meaning of consciousness, which is really, you didn't use that word, but that's sort of what you were talking about. And maybe we could even substitute consciousness for emptiness. And that it's not, I mean, there's an obvious, in your mind, there might be a dichotomy between the brain and the mind, right?
Hmm.
But of course, there can't be. That's impossible. So they were trying to explain that our consciousness is really a construct of many different parts of the brain working together and the zillions of neurons that make up our brains. So it's a little bit like you were saying that there's no reality to our concepts, but they help us survive. The reason our brains gotten to this point over evolution is that they've helped humans survive in this world, right?
Yes, and that's exactly right. The idea, and we always need input, and the idea of the mind is also the input that goes into it, because it's not just sitting around imagining things, but it's also the input that comes into it. So the phenomena that's out there that we can, and I think that's what makes us different and are able to survive, is that we will be able to take that input and rearrange it in our head, even though that might not be real. Much like the picture of a person is not real, you can look at that picture and take the idea and go and find that person. Just like you can look at a tree. Someone out there at one time looked at a tree and said, "Well, I can build a house out of that." And so it had to be in their mind. The first person who made a log house, in their mind, they created this idea in their head. So that's those concepts. The house isn't real, the house is in his head. And so it's the idea of taking that, even though we can take those empty concepts and construct things out of them, it's still empty. And then, and then that the house is a construct of different elements. So that's the idea of emptiness. It's not something that, like, it doesn't matter, because it does matter.
Keeps you warm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or cool.
Right. Yeah, I sometimes think of human beings, we should really be called Homo conceptus, because that's what we do. We conceptualize things. That's what human beings do. We conceptualize things, just like you just mentioned. But don't take it too seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Kevin, I'd like to thank you for your talks again this week and last week too. And I'm kind of like Gary too. I like the way you reframe some of these kind of basic concepts like the four seals. And one thing that I was kind of thinking about, like this week and last week, the definition of nirvana. I had from my notes from last week, I think we were talking about that it's beyond dualism.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been kind of thinking about this idea of dualism and how it kind of functions like, I see in the workaday world, like somebody's kind of like, somebody's sort of ostracized from the group. So it's us and them.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I've been that person that's been ostracized before, and then I've been on the in group. So in a way, it's kind of like sort of being born either into a God realm or a hell realm, kind of.
Yes, exactly.
Like a thing. So yeah, I was just thinking, wow, that's a big deal to get beyond dualism, and I kind of feel like sort of like it's like getting comfortable with you're either in the in group or the out group, being comfortable there, I think, and having dignity somehow
Mm-hmm.
is the best thing I could think to come up with now.
Yeah.
Actually, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Because one of the things I thought about, it comes from the 12 steps, is the line that comes out of the big book that said acceptance is the key to all my problems.
Yeah.
And when I accept people, places, and things exactly as they are, and that really what they were talking about is that idea of emptiness, in that and creating a going beyond that dualistic idea of I like this but I don't like that. This person is good to me and I'm going to love them, and this person's bad to me, I'm going to hate them. This ideas of and I don't think anybody, I haven't met anybody yet that has completely embraced the idea of total emptiness, and that they can let go of that picking and choosing, but we can lessen our grasp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else? Daryl.
I just want to say, Kevin, thank you for the great Dharma talk and explaining the four sales. I learned a lot.
Well, good. Thank you, Daryl. Okay. If there is anything else, hopefully John will be back next week. He's got technical problems, and he said he's having a technician come over to his house tomorrow, so that's why he's not joining us today. And I'll contact Bruce sometime this week and find out his plans, but I think we have one more week and he should be back later in June. So that's about all I have. So let's do the refuges. I take refuge in Buddha. I take refuge in Dharma. I take refuge in Sangha. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Dudiyampe Buddham saranam gacchami. Dudiyampe Dhamman saranam gacchami. Dudiyampe Sangham saranam gacchami. Tadiyampe Buddham saranam gacchami. Tadiyampe Dhamman saranam gacchami. Tadiyampe Sangham saranam gacchami. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.